Hello and welcome to Gabbitt Media. I'm Grant Abbitt and today we are continuing the fantasy castle on top of the floating island. In this episode we're looking at shading our model and tips and tricks for shading for low poly work. I'll talk through techniques for hand painting the castle in the next episode. This video is sponsored by Sketchfab, which is a great place to buy and sell and view 3D models online. I've used it for a few years now to sell models, and what's really fantastic is that you can view the faces and topology of the model before you buy, so you know exactly what you're getting. You can create an excellent portfolio on there so you can show off your work to its fullest. Links in the description. I'll complete this tutorial by showing you how you can place your models on Sketchfab at the end of the modeling process. Okay, so this is roughly where we got up to last time. I've added a few things, so a few more bricks around the place. I've placed 3 bricks in some place and 2 bricks in other places. And then I've just included the stones in these different areas. Still need to put a window in there, in fact. I've edited the roofs so you can see the tiles and things on top of those. And we're ready to shade our castle and add a bit of colour and vibrancy. So let's go across to the shading editor up the top here. So just a quick reminder, I must be in look dev mode. You can actually go into rendered mode if you want as well. That will give you the effects of your lighting, but look dev mode will give you the effects of this HDRI here. So let's think about the colours. I think it's a great idea to search for some colour palettes. And I've put in colour palettes fantasy. You can then go to images and find some lovely colour palettes to work with. This is quite a nice one because it involves green from the grass. This one too if you want a less saturated one. The purples are looking really nice over here. And following along with these colour palettes can be really helpful as it's a really important part of getting your scene to look really nice. And that's often the difference between professional artists and beginner artists or amateur artists and their understanding of how colours work together. So if you want to bring a palette in, then maybe expanding one of these areas out here, changing it to the image editor and open up your colour palette. Now when I click on an object and I want to change the base colour, I can use the picker and go across to my colour palette and change things up a bit. If you want to change the colours of your rocks and your grass to match up with your colour palette a bit more, then it's a good idea to go into texture paint mode. Use the fill brush and across to the workspace settings, and we can change the blend mode to colour. I'll just load in our colour palette once again and select some of these. Then I can add them to the palette nice and easily. So clicking on my colour, go to the picker, across to my colour palette, and then add it to my collection. So these are a lot more vivid and bright, and I might be changing my mind as I go along depending on what I see. And I'll probably be doing more hand painted stuff anyway. But if you did like the look of perhaps this vibrant green here and you wanted to change the grass to that, we can use that colour setting, use the fill and fill it in with that. Now it won't change your contrast and shading, so you're safe there with the colour blend mode. Now it doesn't match up perfectly, that's because we've got a different saturation here, and we can change the colour to the saturation as well, and you might have to use the multiply and screen brushes to lighten it up or darken it as you see fit. Do turn the strength down and up as you need to get different effects. There's lots of different modes which can be really useful. Try them out, see how you get on. So if I want to make it more saturated like this, I can easily do that. Let's try the rocky base as well. And I can easily make my colours more vivid using the different modes that you can see here. So I'm just having a play around with a really low strength and just adding a bit more vibrancy to my colours. So I had a slight crash there when I tried to save the images. Make sure you save your work regularly. So I've edited my colours really slightly and I'll save those images. And I can always do a bit of a paint over if I want to increase the vibrancy of these. Let's focus more on the castle. So back to shading mode and let's click on the castle and I'll give that a new material with this button just here. And let's call this Castle Tower. So with the materials I tend to push up the roughness right up to maximum. And occasionally if I find it problematic I'll bring the specular down. Obviously that's not for true realism, but it's just for a low poly look. It is down to preference of course, And I'll adapt my color palette really slightly because it's a bit too vibrant for me, to somewhere around there. So quite sort of yellowy bricks. Now with these individual bricks, I think it's good to have those as a slightly different color to our main castle shape, and maybe a tiny bit of adaptation between the rocks as well. So I'll give this a new material as well and call this Stone 1. And a nice bright yellow like this looks good. I'm going to come across here to my material properties and give it a new slot by pressing the plus sign up here. You can do that down here as well, so we're on slot 2 and we've got slot 2 here. We need to create a new material in here and I'll call that Stone 2. So we've got two materials on this object, so one whitish grey and one yellow. It's not changed my object yet. What I need to do is go into edit mode and select the faces that I want to change. Make sure I'm on Stone 2 texture and press assign. Now if I go back to object mode, you can see the new color that's made. Now it looks slightly bluey here. I think that's my HDRI affecting it. And I think it's a bit too stark at the moment, so I'll change that color really slightly, bring it slightly into the yellows, but maybe a touch more of a reddy color. And just experiment and see what looks nice. I'll click on these bricks over here and do the same thing. So this time I'll choose the slot down here and press the plus icon. I can then choose my material from the ones I've got already, so Stone 2, and go into edit mode, select the faces I want to assign, make sure I'm on Stone 2 and press assign. Now the other faces all have the first material. I can of course change this here or in here. So I've got Stone 1 there, which is a slightly different yellow, and let's take a look at how we're getting on. I think maybe a couple of bluish bricks might help as well. I can change that on these bricks down here. So once again, giving it a new material slot, up here this time. And I'm going to give this a completely new material. So I'll call this Stone 3. I'll zoom in on my objects and I'll go into edit mode and select a few faces and assign them to Stone 3. Let's change the color of Stone 3 so we have a tiny bit of blue in there. And it's sort of looking like a marshmallow castle now, which is kind of fun, I think. Back into edit mode and maybe another couple of bricks with another material, and these ones can be Stone 2. Assign. So there we go, this is quite fun. And you'll want to go through your castle, maybe keeping it to that color palette that you've decided, maybe adapting it, and really experiment and see how you get on. The more you experiment, the more you fail and make mistakes, the better you'll get. Now, if I click on the turrets, you can see they're very blocky at the moment. Sometimes that goes with the low poly fill, but in this case, I think there's something we can change. If I right click and press shade smooth, we get it all smooth and it looks a bit blobby. But if I come down here to the object data properties, we can then change this under the normals to auto smooth. And that takes any edges that have an angle greater than 30 degrees and will make it sharp. So if I increase this angle, you can see it starts making some areas soft as they don't fall into that criteria. So bring it down and we've got these nice sharp bits around here now. If I go too far, then it will include everything. So adapt this according to the angle of your shapes and it will give it a much nicer look. So I'll do the same with the other ones. Now for these two turrets, they're still joined to the roofs. I think it's a lot easier to separate them. So we can go into these, into edit mode, go into edge mode, select this edge loop going around the middle there and press V for rip. Now that didn't work because there's a vertex in here that isn't selected, so I'll go in and select that one as well and V to rip. So there's obviously some slight issue there. If I do a loop cut and bring it up and then select this edge loop and delete the faces, that'd be a nice quick way to sort it out. I can then grab this in the Z-axis and scale it out a little bit so they overlap, and that's fine. Not quite sure what the problem was there, but an easy solution. Now I can select all, press P and separate by loose parts. Now they're two separate objects. Same with this one down here, into edit mode. Let's see if this one works this time. So press 2 to go to edge mode, Alt left click to select this edge loop and then V to rip. It failed again. Again, not sure what the reason is for that. The other method is to select all your faces On the top area here, I'm just selecting lots of face loops. You can use C to circle select. Make sure you've got all those. I'll go into isolation mode to make absolutely sure. There's a couple of that I missed. Make sure you've got all those. And then P, separate by selection. So a couple of ways of doing that. Back out of isolation mode with / on my numpad, and we've separated that out. Now I can go into the roof object, give it a new material with this new material button here, and this time I'll go for a more sort of orangey colour, closer to reddish roof tiles. Perhaps not quite as saturated, somewhere around there. Now you can see the colour mix that I've got going on here, and it's not quite suitable, I would say. If you're going for a low poly look, you can adapt these a lot more than I have with my colours, but I'll be eventually painting my castle anyway, so I'm not too worried, and I'll adapt my colours a bit more when I get to the painting stage. But for now, let's grab these two roofs, this one last, Control L to link the materials together, and there's materials. So have a bit of fun setting up your colours for your castle. Change your different stones so they've got different colours, and maybe the window stones as well. We've also got the door in here, so you can easily change that up. Okay, so that's some brief tips on low poly work. In the next episode, I'll be talking about hand painting the castle. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.